Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanishalaakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Tinamine. Namo Gaura Kishoraya Sakshat Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambhar Sambodhe Padambu Jayate Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Today is the most auspicious Disappearance Day anniversary of one of the previous acharyas in our Sampradaya, His Divine Grace Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj. So a brief biography of Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj let us hear, and by his blessings we will be able to advance in our Krishna consciousness by trying to follow some of the instructions that he has very nicely given us. Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj appeared sometime in the 1830s in the village of Vagyana in East Bengal, or what is now known as Bangladesh. During his boyhood, his mother and father arranged a marriage for him, and he remained in household affairs for more than 20 years. While a householder, he worked as a broker in the grain business, but even at that time he exhibited his spirituality. After the demise of his wife, Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj left his business and went to Vrindavan. There he approached Srila Bhagavad Das Babaji, one of the foremost disciples of Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, and accepted from Bhagavad Das Babaji Maharaj the traditional Paramahamsa Vaishnava Babaji dress. After this he became completely renounced and would stay under trees in various parts of the 168-mile Vraja Mandala or Vrindavan area. He continuously acted thus for a period of approximately 30 years. During this time, he would sometimes travel to the holy places of pilgrimage in northern and western India. Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj became very famous among the great devotees of Vrindavan and was awarded the appropriate title of Bhajananandi. Bhajananandi means one who is dedicated to remain in one place and chant the holy name of the Supreme Lord and completely absorb themselves in the chanting and hearing of the holy name of the Supreme Lord. But we should not try to imitate such great devotees. Rather, we should accept the instructions of our spiritual master and try to follow those instructions in our practical life while hearing the great qualities of our spiritual master and the previous acharyas and their great deeds of devotional service dedicated entirely for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. Even though he received such honor, he never endeavored for even a small bit of material sense gratification and totally disapproved of the secret material desires of pseudo renunciants. There are so many people who try to imitate great devotees and prematurely they try to renounce this world. But it is not very easy to maintain the standard of renunciation exhibited by such Paramahamsas as Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj. He would perform his pure, unalloyed devotional pastimes alone in a profound devotional mood. In the year 1897, during the month of Falguna, when he was in his 60s, Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj proceeded to Navadvip Dham from Vrindavan Dham, and under the instruction, he did this under the instruction of Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. From this time until his disappearance, Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj remained in Navadvip Dham, and in different villages he was visiting the various places of pastimes of Lord Gauranga, and he was realizing the non-difference between Navadvip Dham and Vrindavan Dham. He begged by gathering dry foodstuff from the householders of the holy Dham. He would sometimes offer these foodstuffs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by simply holding them in his hand. He was totally renounced, so he didn't have any elaborate arrangements for offering or cooking or anything like that. In order to cook, he would collect dry wood from the footpath, and he would wash earthen pots discarded by the villagers along the roadside near the Ganges river on the occasion of eclipses. These are considered totally impure, but a renunciant has nothing to do with purity and impurity of this world. Just he would take something of no value to others, and somehow with those bare minimum things he would maintain himself. This would actually ensure that such great devotees are never entangled in any material endeavors. They save time, maximum amount of time, for their spiritual activities exclusively. In order to clothe himself, he would go to the shore of the Ganges and collect and wash discarded cloth that had been used to cover dead bodies at the burning ghat. This was his level of renunciation. Thus, he always remained independent of the support of others simply by utilizing items of no value to others. In such a manner, he obtained the practical necessities of life. In 1897, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur constructed his place of bhajana on the bank of the Saraswati river at Godruma Dvipa, one of the 9 islands in Navadvipa, called Swananda Sukhada Kunja. This is the name Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave to that building he constructed. This was a gathering place for exalted souls, for great devotees. Here, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur recited and explained the Srimad Bhagavatam and other topics regarding the conclusion of devotional service. And Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj would come and hear these talks with great delight. In this way, Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj accepted Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur as his Shiksha Guru. Also, Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj accepted Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur as his only disciple. That's how you see in our parampara, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder, acharya of ISKCON. His guru is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. His guru is Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj. And his Shiksha Guru is Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This is the parampara in which Srila Prabhupada, the founder acharya of ISKCON, is coming. So, Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj is the spiritual master of the spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada. His only possessions, if at all you may consider them as possessions, were the tulsi beads he wore around his neck, this kanti mala, and the tulsi mala he kept in his hand for counting his rounds. His kanti mala and his japa mala were his only 2 possessions. He also kept a few books such as Narottam Das Thakur's Prarthana and Prema Bhakti Chandrika. These are two famous books written by Sri Narottam Das Thakur, contains a collection of the songs he has composed explaining the pure devotional service. Even though it appeared that Gaura Kishora Das Babaji Maharaj was not a learned Sanskrit scholar, still the purport and conclusions of all scriptures were luminous in his heart and character. It is described in the scriptures that chanting of the holy name reveals all transcendental knowledge within the heart, and this is practically seen in the life of Srila Gaura Kishora Das Babaji Maharaj. He knew all the conclusions of the scriptures without studying them separately. That is because his chanting was pure. We should not imitate this. It was never possible for anyone to serve him, for he was never willing to accept any kind of service from any person. He exhibited the highest standard of devotion to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, and because of his exemplary character, he was recognized as the personification of the deepest degree of separation from Lord Sri Krishna. Vipralamba Seva, service in separation from Krishna. This is what is taught by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, especially in our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. Because in separation from Krishna, one feels intense mood of service to Krishna, not as much as when one is in the presence of Krishna. It is more intense than in the presence of Krishna. In separation from Krishna, one is able to serve with more intensity Krishna, with that intense feeling of devotion towards Krishna. There are many incidents recorded by biographers about his preaching. Even though he is called a Bhajananandi, he would not travel and actively preach, but anybody approached him for getting guidance, for getting some practical instructions, he was ever willing to give them his divine association. So I'll just mention one or two such incidents which are very instructive for all of us. Once a lawyer by name Bhattacharya brought several sweets and prayerfully requested Srila Gaura Kishora Das Babaji Maharaj to accept his offering. Srila Babaji Maharaj told him, "I never take any sweets." So then Bhattacharya replied, "There is nothing higher than accepting food that the Lord has directly accepted," indicating thereby that it is prasadam. Why are you refusing prasadam? So then Srila Babaji Maharaj, Gaura Kishora Das Babaji Maharaj, sharply retorted, "Whoever eats fish is like a prostitute." These are harsh words, but then they are required to cut through the several layers of illusion that is clouding the consciousness of a conditioned soul. If someone has perverted desires and offers foodstuffs to Lord Chaitanya, these preparations can never be accepted as the prasad of the Supreme Lord, because the Lord does not partake of them. What does Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita? Yo me bhaktya prayachati patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati. The important aspect of the offering, more than the item itself, is the devotion with which that offering is made. So Krishna, what does he want when we offer? He wants devotion. He wants bhakti. So somebody is having lusty desires in his heart and then makes a show of offering, that is not accepted by Krishna. To offer foodstuffs to the Supreme Lord that have been contaminated by one's lusty desire should be considered a great offense. That means it is against our devotional interest. If one accepts the grains of a sinful person, then his mind becomes impure. This is very important for all of us, that why do we say eat only prasadam? Don't eat food that is not offered to Krishna, because we do not know sometimes the source of such food. Could be, if it is not properly offered to Krishna, then it could be from the sinful person, and then that contaminates our mind. So we should be very careful not to accept anything which is not prasadam, properly offered to Krishna. Thus one is directed by Babaji Maharaj not to accept food cooked by lustful persons, especially by those who know the actual standard of behavior expected of devotees of Sri Krishna, but who nevertheless indulge knowingly in illicit activities. So this is very, very important for us to remember. Knowingly one should never indulge in sinful activities, at the same time perform devotional service, especially offering of foodstuff to the Supreme Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed Srila Swarup Damodar Goswami as follows: when one eats food offered by a materialistic man, one's mind becomes contaminated. And when the mind becomes contaminated, one is unable to think of Krishna properly. Contaminated mind is not conducive for any form of devotional service. Our practice becomes obstructed. Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj always gave beneficial instructions to persons who approached him with faith and humility, no matter what their spiritual status might have been. On one such occasion, a seeker went to Babaji Maharaj to hear topics concerning the Supreme Lord, but he heard some harsh words from him instead. The seeker therefore resolved never again to go near Babaji Maharaj, because he was feeling hurt by the harsh words spoken by Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj. After some time, however, when he was very much distressed in his mind, he decided to go and see Babaji Maharaj. So Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj could immediately understand the reason for the depression of this particular seeker, and he told him, "You have left the association of devotees where topics about Krishna are discussed, and now you are living in a secluded place performing solitary worship of Krishna. When one hears the topic of Supreme Lord in the company of devotees, then one becomes freed from Maya's net of illusion. But if someone performs worship of the Lord in a secluded place, not in the association of devotees, one becomes caught by the material illusory energy of the Lord. As a consequence, instead of topics about the Supreme Lord possessing the heart, mundane subject matters will occupy the heart." The seeker replied, "I thought it better to reside in a secluded place and perform my own individual worship than to become disturbed by hearing the sharp words of a sadhu." He thought, if I remain with the sadhu and the sadhu speaks very harsh words, then my mind will always be disturbed. I can peacefully go to some other place and do my own worship and be nicely situated to do devotional service. So Babaji Maharaj replied, "Please take note that these sadhus who speak sharp words to drive away the witch of the illusory energy are actually the only real devotees of Krishna and friends of the living entities. When a devotee of the Lord who is always desirous of the living entity's ultimate welfare chastises him just once with instructions meant to drive away Maya, then that living being immediately makes plans to leave the saintly persons for his entire life. If you actually want to perform devotional service properly, then you must accept the harsh language of the sadhu as the medicine by which Maya can be given up. It's just like when a doctor prescribes a medicine, even if it is bitter, you take it because you know that only by taking the proper medicine, even if it is bitter, it will cure you of your ailment or disease. So, you should not look for something that is tasting sweet when it comes to taking medicine. Similarly, the harsh words of a sadhu may sound like very, very hurting, but actually they are meant simply to pull you out of illusion, which is the purpose of your doing devotional service. By this one can obtain the necessary spiritual advancement to successfully chant the holy name of the Supreme Lord. Then another instance, one other person, he inquired from Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj as follows. He said, "We see that there are many Vaishnavas living with their wives who perform devotional service to Lord Hari. Will they get any benefit from such service?" Srila Babaji Maharaj replied, "The living entity is the eternal servant of Lord Krishna. But when the conditioned soul looks upon his wife and sons simply by seeing their material external forms, then one does not have the eye of devotion and he can never perceive his real identity as the eternal servant of Krishna." The conditioned souls always have inclination to enjoy their wives and children. That's natural. And they don't like to hear so much the topics of the Supreme Lord or to get association of the Lord's devotees. If one does not attain the spiritual energy given by chanting the holy name, then one will become attracted by his wife and children. Then again, there are other persons who externally want to detach themselves from their wives and children and sense enjoyment, but this kind of external renunciation without actually having that detachment within the heart is like the renunciation of monkeys. Markata Vairagya, this is what it's called. And although they externally live away from family and they may be just having minimum material possessions, but their heart is dirty, their heart is not clean. So, what is the characteristic of a monkey? A monkey lives naked, so it doesn't even have a piece of cloth. It doesn't have a proper house, it lives simply on the shelter of a tree and simply eats some fruits that is available in the tree. So, by this external observation, somebody may say, "Oh, monkey is very renounced," but actually within the heart, the monkey has the desire to enjoy so many female monkeys, not just one. Every male monkey will have so many female monkeys as its companions and associates. So, the external appearance should not be simply the only consideration. Change of dress as a devotee or as a renunciant should reflect the inner detachment, or should at least aim at also simultaneously, strenuously trying for detachment from within the heart. The genuine Vaishnava will never maintain an attitude of sense gratification towards his wife and children. Rather, he will always regard himself as a servant of Krishna and the bona fide spiritual master. Those actually desirous of performing Hari Bhajana, but in whose heart the weeds of material desires grow and who are unable to give up excessive attachment of their wife and children, should always try to hear from pure devotees and chant Hare Krishna and perform congregational chanting instead of leaving their family and going away to a secluded place. One should actually engage in such activities even while remaining in family life. In this way, they can quickly become detached from the inclination to enjoy materially. Then they will gradually realize that if one completely surrenders to Krishna, then one will attain all auspiciousness. As long as one remains in bodily consciousness, one cannot obtain the mercy of Krishna. So in this way, Gaura Kishora Babaji Maharaj taught what is real renunciation, because he himself was a real renunciate. Then regarding his passing away, on November 16th, 1915, Srila Gaura Kishora Babaji Maharaj entered the eternal pastimes of the Lord, Nitya Leela Pravishta. That means he passed away from this world. That day at sunrise, his disciple, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, left Sri Mayapur for the place where Srila Srila Gaura Kishora Babaji Maharaj had been staying, in a place at Kulia. The head priests of Navadvip's various temples and ashrams began to argue where would Babaji Maharaj's Samadhi be made, the actual place. So there was a heated argument among so many different people. So because there was a material motive, whoever got the opportunity to prepare the Samadhi of this great Paramahamsa, Srila Gaura Kishora Babaji Maharaj, they would have huge number of people visit their temple and get handsomely from the pilgrims. So with this material motive, there was so much of argument. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur could understand their material motive, and he wanted to actually stop them from simply creating a controversy. Now, not only Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted to avoid the controversy, but even the Navadvip's inspector of police, whose name was Jatindra Sinha at that time, he arrived at that place apprehending some breach of peace. So after much discussions, the other Vaishnavas who were running different ashrams and mutts, they stated their position to the inspector that Saraswati Thakur is not a sannyasi. He has no right to prepare a samadhi for a person who is completely renounced. Hearing their pronouncement, Saraswati Thakur replied in a voice like thunder, I am the sole disciple of Paramahamsa Srila Gaura Kishora Babaji Maharaj, even though I have not accepted sannyas. I am a celibate brahmachari, and by the grace of Babaji Maharaj, I am not hypocritical, renunciant, addicted to abominable habits. So he put a challenge for those people. Who within the last 1 year or 6 months or 3 months or just even 1 month or even 3 days has not indulged in illicit association with women will be able to touch the spiritually blissful body of Srila Gaura Kishora Babaji Maharaj. If anyone else touches the body, he will be completely ruined. Hearing these words, the inspector of police asked Srila Saraswati Thakur, how will evidence for this be produced? So Saraswati Thakur replied, I will believe whatever they say. Let them just tell it, that's all. After this challenge was offered, all the other Babajis, they turned their backs and went away one by one. That means they all accepted that they were not leading a pure life. The inspector was dumbfounded. Then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur actually prepared a nice samadhi and laid to rest the blissful transcendental body of Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj. So let us end this presentation with the prayer to Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj. Namo Gaura Kishoraya Sakshat Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambhara Sambode Padambujayate Namaha. The meaning is, I offer my respectful obeisances unto Srila Gaura Kishora Dasa Babaji Maharaj, the spiritual master of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, whose renunciation personified Sakshat Vairagya Murti. He is always merged in a feeling of separation from an intense love of Krishna. Hare Krishna.